Hi, I'm Caitlin.
Hi, I'm Rebecca.
We're not from Memphis, but we love it.
Welcome to Memphis Type History, the podcast. Hello, Rebecca Phillips here, and I want to give you an introduction to this week's episode. Originally, this episode was going to be about the celebration and history of Hanukkah in Memphis, with the Festival of Lights being just around the corner. However, you'll soon discover it is so much more than that. We were connected with Lynnie Mirvis, a member of the Jewish Historical Society of Memphis in the Mid-South, who not only tells us the story of Hanukkah, but also the story of a Jewish community from the Pinch District and their move through different locations. Lynnie also shared additional information about Jewish culture and landmarks after the interview, which you can find on our show notes, memphistypehistory.com/Hanukkah. You'll also see the titles of a few books Lynnie recommends of Jewish culture, one of which is written by her own daughter. And now, on to the interview.
My full name is Arlen Shara Katz Mirvis, and people in my family when I was growing up called me Lynnie as a nickname, and when I moved back to Memphis, I've gone by Lynnie Mirvis, my married name. And my Hebrew name is Elia Sora.
Everybody has the Hebrew name?
Yeah, in the Jewish community, yes. We're given Hebrew names. Certain Jewish traditions, you're named after someone. I was named after my grandfather, Eliyahu, and I'm named Elia. It's from the prophet Elijah, and I like that name.
It is a beautiful name.
So I haven't claimed it. I have all these names, English names, Hebrew names. I use that name when I do paintings. I'll sign my name, Elia.
Elia.
So
that is beautiful.
Yeah.
So your name changed when? Are you?
And I was
from
a cat.
Israel, or where are you from?
No. I'm born and raised in Memphis, and on my mother's side, I'm like fifth generation Memphian.
Okay.
So yeah, my great grandmother came from Germany with her parents in the 1870s. When she was a little girl with her big sister. They came to Memphis. So,
okay. And you stay here, so that means you like
we're
Memphis, okay?
I was born and raised in Memphis. I have a lot of family here, and I went to college in New York City and met my husband, David.
Oh, and then you brought him over
also
here.
from the South. And then at the time, I didn't think that there would be any other place to live except for Memphis. My parents were here. Then it took a while to get used to it. We moved away and then came back a few years later, and our children were born here.
You said you went to an academy here in Memphis?
Right. In the late 40s, there was something called the Jewish Day School movement. People were immigrating, from Europe. It was after the Holocaust, and some had been here a few generations, and it was felt like the children were really not learning enough about their Judaism, learning Torah. So in Memphis, there was a Jewish day school that was started.
Because of
Rabbi Nathan Greenblatt and Rabbi Kuttner, two rabbis who came from New York, were here in other capacities as a cantor and assistant rabbi at the synagogues here, the Orthodox synagogues, and they started the school. It was a parochial school, kind of, that would teach general subjects a half day, and then the Jewish Hebrew, the Hebrew language, and the Torah as subjects, which includes lots of, Christians call the Old Testament. That's our 5 books of Moses, and the Tanakh, and other subjects. Yeah.
So before then, was there not a school geared toward that?
For Orthodox,
were people not learning Hebrew? And
there was the different synagogues. There were different denominations had after-school programs. Called a cheder. After school, where I think when boys became a bar mitzvah, they learned Hebrew. Girls, to a lesser extent, sometimes they did, and so or in some cases there was just Sunday school in the Jewish community, so they learned just a little bit. If they learned a little bit, right? This was, just a little bit.
School though, so that
right. So
everyone engaged. You mentioned Bar Mitzvah. That is one thing that I've always wanted to be invited to.
Oh, you've never been invited to Bar Mitzvah.
Can you tell me what that is?
Okay, Bar Mitzvah. What is a Bar Mitzvah? It literally means the son of mitzvah. And mitzvah is literally commandments, or they are in our Torah the 613 mitzvot, the commandments that every Jewish person is obligated to do. They include, I would translate it good deeds, except that's not exactly right. It's more the having relation, the way you relate to your to other people through kindness, and the way, and then the holidays and different things that you do as being Jewish, the Shabbat, the Sabbath. And so when you become a Bar Mitzvah, it's at 13 years old for a boy, and a girl becomes a Bat Mitzvah.
With the T.
Daughter, with the T. But, yeah, I'm using the Israeli pronunciation. Sometimes in some circles they say Bas Mitzvah, but Bat Mitzvah.
Okay.
And
at the same age for a
the
girl?
daughter of the, in the Orthodox community it's 12 years old. In Reform and some conservative it could be 13.
Okay.
So
But
it's become a celebration. So it is just that you've come of age, that now you've become part of the Jewish community, and you are responsible for for conducting your life, through mitzvah and doing, the commandments and leading a life of Torah, a life of good deeds and kindness. So
that's when they got to grow up,
right? Become a celebration, especially in the United States too, where there's usually a Sabbath observance where they're called to the Torah. I don't know if you know what that is. In the synagogue, every Saturday, which is our Sabbath. That's one of the gifts I think the Jewish people have given to the world. It's a day of rest. It's a Sabbath, a day of contemplation, a day of going to the synagogue. And in the service, there is a reading of the Torah scroll. It's a scroll that opens up, and that's what the 5 books of Moses is. It's in Hebrew. And it's a scroll that opens up. It's taken out and put on what they call the bima, which in the synagogue is like a little table. And the Bar Mitzvah boy is called up to the Torah, says a blessing, and then we'll read a portion of that or of the Haftarah, which is from the prophets sometimes. So,
and all your kids have one?
In different ways, right. And Bat Mitzvah is celebrated differently depending on whether you're an Orthodox or Reform conservative. So they're different.
So
it's a market, right?
Okay.
The celebration. And then there's some people have parties. Yes, our children, right? Celebrations or to mark them of age.
What would be? You mentioned Reformed and Orthodox. Is there another Jewish?
Yeah, if you want to get to the denominations, there's conservative, there's Reconstructionist, there's Hasidic, there's Jewish Renewal, which is more not really a denomination, right? So you want to know the differences between a little bit. I can tell you that the uniqueness of being Jewish is that to be Jewish is you are part of the Jewish people. It is being a people, and it is a faith community. So it's 2 things. You could maybe not, have faith in some of the mitzvot or in some of the beliefs, yet you're still part of the Jewish people. It's everyone, no matter whether you're Orthodox, Reform, conservative. And one of the key, that's right. And through the ages, really before the 18th century or the 1800s, there was no such thing as Orthodox, Reform, conservative. There were no labels.
It was just Jewish.
It was just Jewish. And really there was in Eastern Europe, there was a lot of persecution. There was Jews lived in ghettos. There was and led their own lives, separately. But when the modern period came during the Enlightenment, and I think Jews had more equal rights to a degree, then the Jewish people started questioning. There was a group of people who wanted to reform. They wanted to create more modern ways of looking at Judaism. So they were called the Reformers. Okay. And they kind of, the way they looked at the Torah, they felt like they could change things. So things have, and then the conservatives was really an American movement in the early 1900s, maybe, that wanted to conserve. They felt that it had gone so far, the Reformers, that they wanted to kind of bring it back to tradition. So that's one way to look at it. And so then the people who were kept the mitzvot didn't want those reforms who were called Orthodox. It's very much more diverse than really what I could tell you.
Okay.
There's a Hasidic movement, which was a movement to bring more joy into Judaism, and that was in the 1700s, late 1700s, and the Baal Shem Tov started that. It was that we need to bring song and story to connect with God. So,
interesting.
Right. Yeah.
And would you see all of those? Would you call it denominations, or
I guess, yeah. Here
would you see all of those within Memphis, or not so much?
Actually, yes.
Really.
You would. I can tell you, there is a large Reformed temple here that is on Massey Road, a beautiful building. Several thousand families are members, and then there are also, it's called Temple Israel.
Oh,
Yeah. You may have heard that. And there are several Orthodox shuls. We call them synagogues or shuls. There's the Anshe Sfard Beth Elimeth that I go to. It's right around the corner here on Rich and East Yates, right over there.
I'm pretty certain that's one I went to.
Did you go to that? And
I think so.
Francis Ma, the famous architect, designed it
beautiful.
with the silver walls and the colors of the tabernacles from the tower. So you've been there, you think, yeah.
I think so.
It was where I grew up at Baron-Hirsch, and they're over there on Yates. Beautiful stained glass windows, a beautiful big building. And there is a Young Israel there across the street. There's the yeshiva and the Hebrew Academy where I went to school. They also have a place in a high school called the yeshiva where they have services on weekends. And then there's Chabad, which is Hasidic, which is out on Kirby.
Would you happen to have any photographs that you could share that we could post on show notes?
Yeah, I was looking for photographs. I think I do. Now, I grew up by the old Baron-Hirsch. Well, I call it the old Baron-Hirsch, was the old Jewish neighborhood, not the oldest. I mean, the Jewish neighborhood really started by the river, near the Mississippi River.
Really, downtown.
Just like everybody, just like everything else. There was the Pinch. Have you heard of the Pinch?
Yeah, the Pinch District.
And there were Jewish families there. There were synagogues there, and the Children of Israel, I know, was the first synagogue started here in the 1850s.
Where was that one?
I want to say that it was on Poplar and Exchange, and I don't think it's still standing. Yeah, of course it's not still standing. They had another one, and I have a picture of that. That was also on Poplar. It was a beautiful building with two huge, like Turkish kind of architecture. And I think they tore that down. And of course now then they moved. They were over there where the Mississippi Boulevard Church is now. Then that became their building.
Okay.
But I grew up in the Orthodox community in Valentine Hills, across the street from the Baron-Hirsch, which it also started downtown. And then I think they moved to a building which was on Washington. And I don't know, and they also built a Menorah Institute, which was supposed to be for teenagers and young people to meet. And
what would a Menorah Institute?
It was called the Menorah Institute, and I think on Washington 4th, I think one of those buildings could be still standing. It's like a police station. It's on Washington and 4th. So I wanted. One of them was torn down. So they had the synagogue, I think, was torn down. Actually, the Hebrew Academy first had met in someone's house. And then when I was going to school back in, when did I go? The 1952. It was in a little bit later, the early 50s. It was in that Baron-Hirsch building, that synagogue over there in Washington 4th. So.
Yeah, it was all
So
downtown.
now it's a police station, right? And Anshe Sfard was also, two synagogues merged, the Bethel and Anshe for this building that you were in, but it had been downtown and then was on North Parkway for a while. That's now, I think, a senior citizen home or something over there on North Parkway. Everything that keeps moving. People move as the neighborhoods change and they're wanting more space, and I know. Yeah.
But it moves as a community, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
So Temple Israel, there's also, is the headquarters in Crosstown? Do you know? I've seen a Temple Israel sign in the Crosstown building.
There's also, There's a young group, there's the Jewish professionals that live in Midtown. Most of the Jewish community is out in East Memphis here.
Okay.
Or in Germantown, near the synagogues and the temple. But there is a small Jewish group of people that live in Midtown. And I know Temple Israel has like a satellite there. Maybe that's it. I mean, they call it the Jewish Neighborhood House. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. But it could be. Maybe that's what you saw, that they have a...
Yeah, I think
like
it's
a satellite.
like their meeting, like their meeting place.
send their rabbis and people to do activities with the people there or down there.
Do you know anything about the Turner Dairy building being anything?
Right. Well, when I was growing up, the Jewish Community Center started around the same time as the Hebrew Academy. It seems like in the late 40s.
Was it run by the same people or anything?
It was some of the leaders in the Jewish community felt like the young Jewish people didn't have a place. There was a certain amount of prejudice, I suppose. They didn't have a place to congregate. Maybe they had been congregating a little bit in the Temple Israel, but they wanted a place where all of the Jewish young people could meet. Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, where it could be to unify the Jewish community. So
like a place for activities or exercise? Or
right. It was sort of like, it had everything. And it was in the building that the Turner Dairy bought recently. Not the first building with the big milk bottle, but there was a building behind that, because I remember seeing the Turner Dairy every time I went to the Jewish Community Center.
So Turner Dairy was there.
It was already there, and recently they just bought that old building that had been the Jewish Community Center. It had swimming pools outside.
Really?
It had a preschool. I think I may have gone there when I was 3 years old. They had a summer day camp.
Really? Right there.
And so it was all there, and lots of activities. I remember during the 50s, it was very important to learn ballroom dancing. So they had all kinds of activities, arts and crafts. I don't know, do that. But it was, So, and they had meetings. There were, the Jewish youth groups met there, and they had adult theater, Jewish theater. So it was a cultural arts and coming together.
For young and adults.
And also for adults, right. A place where people could, meet together and do, there was a basketball court, and different sports.
Play, swim, and dance.
Right, dances, right. Plays, Yeah,
and
the synagogues were separate. Synagogues were the places where you went to
worship,
to prayed. And
did you have to rent out the community center, or did you have to pay membership?
I think there was a membership. I don't think it was that much.
And is there anything like that here in the east?
Right.
Side
Well, the Jewish Community Center moved to a very beautiful campus over there on Poplar.
That's where it went. Okay.
It's a really state of the art. It has exercise rooms. It has an early childhood center, day camp, and it has a water park outside playground, and lots of sports teams play out there, and there are lots of cultural arts activities. It's evolved, and they have senior programs, all kinds of programs, and it's open to the entire community. So it's become Jewish people and people from who want to use that facility, invited to become members.
Does it have a swimming pool as well?
It has an indoor swimming pool and a gorgeous outdoor swimming pool with like a water park with slides and all kinds of things.
Okay, where is this? I gotta look.
At 6560 Poplar Avenue. So that complex also has the Memphis Federation, Jewish Community Partners. It's the Jewish Foundation, and the Jewish Family Services become part of the Jewish Federation in the building next to it. And those institutions, they're very old. They're service organizations that do fundraising to help the Jewish institutions in the city here, and to send money to Israel, and to help other people that in need.
Being that this is we're coming up on Hanukkah season. Okay, tell me, is it Hanukkah or Shanukkah? Or am I just saying it completely wrong?
No, you're saying it. You said it very well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the ch sound is not a sound that is in the English language. Ch. So it's hard to write it. So sometimes you'll see it written CH.
Yeah, but
it's really it's a H. But if you can't say H, people just say H, like H.
Oh.
Hanukkah. It's really Hanukkah.
Hanukkah.
Right. You said it. You got it. Right.
But you would spell it CH.
I don't know. I've seen it spelled different ways.
Both
I've seen it HANUKKAH and HANUK.
How do you spell it?
Oh, I think I'd get rid of the C probably. Just know how to say it. Yeah.
So what is the big picture of that, what it means to light the menorah, and why do you celebrate
Right.
Hanukkah?
That's right, Hanukkah. Yeah. Why do we celebrate Hanukkah? That is a really good question, and it's really become much more visible in the United States because it's not one of the major holidays in Judaism. Passover with the story and the narrative of the going out of Egypt and the Exodus. That's one of the key pin narratives that unites really all Jewish people, no matter which denomination. And then there's the High Holy Days and Shavuot, the giving of the Ten Commandments and the Torah, after Passover. So those are huge. But Hanukkah has a special place. It was a historical event, yet it is a very spiritual holiday of lighting the candles, to see the lights. Families gather, and when you light one on the first day and two on the second day, and you gather around the lights and look at the light and contemplate, how a small spark of light can make a difference in the world. And it is based on a historical event. And the story I like to tell you in a nutshell. Do you want me to?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, it's a metaphor story called Lights, and I'll tell you what the metaphor is afterwards. When the Jewish people received the lights from the mountain of Sinai, these lights taught them how to live, and they took the lights everywhere they went, and then they took them to the land of Israel, to the promised land, and those lights were very precious to them. And they built a special house called a Bet HaMikdash, a temple, to put the lights in. They had a special menorah, and they lit.
Lights as in fire?
Lights, yeah. And this is the metaphor. I'm telling you this story like I've told children. Then I'll tell you what it means. And the lights are like a really metaphor for the Torah and for the laws and the oral traditions that they carried with them. And so there was an actual menorah, and there was the actual oil that was lit in those in this menorah. And so they lived in peace in the land. And then new conquerors would come to the land. There was Babylonia, there was Persia, and many were exiled, but they returned and they rebuilt the temple. And it so happened that when Alexander the Great came in 325 BC, before the Common Era, he came and he was conquering the world, and he came to Jerusalem. And he saw, the storyteller says, the lights, really the Torah, the traditions of the Jewish people. He was fascinated with Judaism. So he didn't destroy the community. He and the Greeks that came with him lived in peace, and the Jewish people lived in peace. They were fascinated with Greek culture. The Greeks were fascinated with Judaism, and they each kept their own identity. Well, as time went on, a new ruler came, and his name was Antiochus, and he was a king of the Greeks, the Syrian Greeks, and he wasn't happy with this, everybody being different, and the Jewish people were very different from their culture. So he said, we want to take away your culture. You cannot keep the Sabbath. You cannot circumcise your sons. You can't learn the Torah, and many people resisted. Some tried to assimilate, and they were scared, and so this was a struggle. And he said, I want you to give up your lights. That's how this story, this metaphor goes, give up. And the people refused. And so he thought that he would get rid of the people if they wouldn't give up their lights, their Torah, their values. So the people fought back. He sent huge armies, And, if you go into the Maccabees, there's a story of the Maccabees, and that's where that comes from. They were the leaders who fought back, who led the people against this huge army with elephants, and there was Judah back in, and there was a struggle. And the very teeny band of Maccabees in the land of Israel were able to push out this Greek army. And they were able to do it. And when they went to the temple, to the Bet HaMikdash, it had been desecrated. There had been Jupiter idol, all kind of Greek idols and pigs and things put into that temple, and they cleaned it up, and they searched for a little cruse of oil, for one little light to light the menorah, and no one could find it. And it took many weeks to make any new, pure oil. They needed pure olive oil. And so the story goes that there was a little child that found this little teeny cruse, and it was just enough to last for one day, and they were able to light the menorah. But the miracle it was written years later in the Talmud, the oral traditions that were written down, called the Talmud. So it lasted for 8 days. And so it kept burning and until they were able to get more. And so the miracle of Hanukkah is twofold: the miracle of the few over the many, and the miracle of the lights that people saw the hand of the Kodesh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, of the divine, of God in their lives. So it was a time of thanksgiving, and from that day on, at that time of year, the 25th of Kislev, Jews all over the world have lit, Hanukkah menorahs. Hanukkah is what you say, and it's really, so they have 8 candles. In the temple there were 7, but there were 8, and one
to represent those 8 days.
The 8 days, right? And then the 9th one is the lighter. It's called the shamus. It lights. You take it to light the other candles. So the story is
and every night you kind of meditate,
right? So you gather around, and people have family, and nowadays, all the synagogues either have a Hanukkah dinner. I know ours is having, our big fat Greek Hanukkah dinner. That's what our synagogues do with latkes. They're having Greek baklava. There's the Greek and Jewish, right? Jewish culture, right? And Hirsch has something. Temple Israel has a Hanukkah something. All of all the synagogues, Beth Shalom, the conservative shul has something, and Chabad is even going down to Beale Street Landing. They're going to have a boat, and they're going to light the Hanukkah menorah on the boat.
I didn't know about this.
On December 17th at 3:00.
Every year do they do this?
They do something different. Chabad does something different every year. They are the ones that, and there's a lot of Jewish laws around all of our holidays, and one important thing is to publicize the miracle. So when we light, we put our menorahs in the window. I bring table and put it over there by the mirror, by the window, and all of our children will have their own Hanukkah menorah, and everybody lights their own. I mean, everyone does a little different. Some people might not do that, and you see the lights from the window. So Chabad has these huge menorahs that they put out at the airport. I don't know if you've ever seen them.
How have I missed this?
They put so they're going down to the river.
So they'll be at the river. December 17th, is that
right, at 3:00, Beale Street Landing.
3:00 during the day?
Yeah. I'm thinking, though, they may go on the boat, and then at 4:30, really, I don't know how, I'm wondering, the sun goes down. Usually you wait till it gets dark.
Okay.
That would be 5:30. I don't know if they're going to
work downtown, so I could just
they may
walk
light
down
a little bit early. I don't know if people are going to boat. I'm not sure what they're...
Although, what day of the week is...
It's a Sunday. Sunday afternoon.
That's nice.
So it's, you eat latkes, anything with the oil to remind you of the miracle of the oil.
That's what that's from.
And there are blessings that you say before you light the candles. There's a blessing of thanksgiving to God, for bringing us to this time to be able to light the candles, and for letting us see the miracles.
Do you sing?
Yeah, there is. In English, it's called Rock of Ages.
Rock of Ages.
Ma'osur. Yeah, it's a...
Yes, please sing.
I don't think I can sing it. So,
is this in Hebrew?
Yeah, it's Hebrew. There are 5 verses, and it goes through really Jewish history. In every age, there was there were those who, wanted to destroy the Jewish people, and somehow, we survived. It's a, very, yeah. And Hanukkah Solo. Then there's there's also a song about the candles. I'll show you in the prayer book. I don't think I can sing.
Not gonna sing.
Ma'asur Yeshua si. Anyway, I think I won't sing. But it's a very joyous holiday, and it used to. There's a dreidel. You know about a dreidel? A spinning top. I have the wax one.
Oh, that's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
The children, yeah.
I mean, I've seen
it becomes a children's game. It kind of has a story that when the Greeks were trying to see who was learning from the holy books from the Torah that was forbidden, it was against the law, they would the children or the people would hide the books, and they'd take out the dreidel game. So that was a way to kind of to be able to learn in secret. And there's a Hebrew letter on each side, so it becomes a game. Okay. Nun Gimel Hey Shin. Nes Gadol Hayasham, a great miracle happened there. And if it lands on the Gimel, that means you win. And everyone puts in a piece of candy. It's kind of like a little game where you put in both the pot. On? So if it lands on the Gimel, then you get everything in the middle. Like everyone has to put in a piece of. See, this is not the Nun means if it lands on that, it's nothing.
Means you don't get anything.
You get the right Gimel, yeah. Is you get everything. Hay is half, and Shin is you have to put in one. Oh. You can take over. This is from the old city of Sfat, from I think it was from Israel. But I was looking for my dreidels, and I think I gave them to all my grandchildren. Oh, but in Israel, it's called a Sizivam, and they have a great miracle happened here.
Where,
so the last Israel.
Oh, in Israel.
In Israel, the dreidel, it has a different letter at the end. Instead of a great miracle happened there, we say that because this miracle happened in the land of Israel.
Right.
So they say a great miracle happened here. Po would be the Hebrew word for here, so there's a little pay. So this is the menorah, one of the menorahs we use. I don't know if you want to take a picture.
Do you have pictures of this lit up?
Oh, I do.
That would be great. If
and the window,
yeah, that would be great.
I have the window. I have some really pretty pictures.
That's beautiful.
But this was from an artist in Israel, Zelig
That's
Siegel.
From Israel.
And this is from Israel. So we enjoy going because now our children live in Israel. Some of our children, our son and daughter-in-law, and my 9 grandchildren. So we'll be there this year for the last day of Hanukkah.
Yeah. Any other stories that you'd like to share about any history, personal or cultural or any?
I feel very thankful that I have been able to live here with my husband, David, and we have been able to raise our children here in Memphis, and now they are all in different places.
Yeah,
right. We miss them. They are my father, and So Memphis is a unique place. It's a place where there are many different avenues, to choose from in a smaller scale. It's not big. It's not a big city.
Right.
And it's not a small town, so we're somewhere in between.
Yeah, which is kind of comforting.
Yes.
Do you imagine any of your kids might come back?
And at this point, I think that they are wanting to be in bigger places.
Right. They like the bigger.
In bigger places, yeah.
A rabbi told my husband that the root word in Yiddish for Jewish means thankful.
Oh, right.
How does that play out in your life, and especially in this holiday season?
Right, yeah. Yeah. Well, the root word comes from the word Yehudah, from the name Yehudah, and he was the 4th son of Leah in the Bible. Okay. And so she gave her sons, and they were to become part of the 12 tribes of Israel. So she gave her sons different names to mean how she was feeling. And at that point, she felt very thankful that here was a son that she would be connected with her husband now, Jacob. So that's the root. And I think every morning when a Jewish person gets up, there's an obligation to say the Moda Ani, which means thank you. You're saying thank you to God for returning my soul.
Oh, is it a short and sweet thank you, or is it
it's it's part of the morning prayer service. There's several prayer services, but it's just a short Modani Lefanecha, thank you. Mm-hmm. That you've returned my soul, and that actually it's taught to little children, that particular prayer.
So it's just they grow up with it. That's really sweet. I feel like that would help your attitude in life. If you start your day off with Thanksgiving in your heart, automatically that's going to give you an optimism to your start of your day. Right.
That's why Thanksgiving is a very core value, of being Jewish, I think, because I think your husband's right. It is the root of the word Jewish. So Yehudim, Jews, and that comes from Yehuda, and that root word is thankfulness. And and Yehuda was the land of Israel, so it all resonates together.
I'm trying one of these chocolates. They look really good.
I know, it's important, dark chocolate. As a matter of fact, there's 100 blessings a day as Jews that we have, that we can say it's in our prayer book. And there's a blessing to say over each piece of food that you eat.
Oh, really?
Should
I recite that before?
That's over you, right? You don't have to.
Okay.
That's the Jewish people do that, and those people who do observe that.
That's really good.
Right.
Your parents were both from here?
Both my father and mother were born here, and my father's parents came from Poland. His father and brother came right before World War I. And why did they come to Memphis? There's always a joke. Why did you come to Memphis? Well, the horse died here or something. But they came. There was a cousin here. How that cousin got here and sent for them. And they left their town of Poland. They were married already. They left their wives. And I think my grandfather had one son, and his brother had 4 children, and they were going. I guess they were going for a better life, to escape persecution, to also find a better way of life. And they came, and they opening up first a grocery store, and then they started. Automobiles were brand new, and they started auto parts.
Oh, wow.
Store. It's called Katz Brothers. So that's how they came. I never knew my grandfather. He died in 1941. So that's who I'm named after. And their wives came. So my grandmother came after World War I in 1921. And my mother's mother came after World War I. Yeah, she was 13 years old. And she came with her parents and 3 of her brothers and a younger sister. Actually, her mother was sent back because she had an eye infection of some kind. And so for 1 year, my grandmother was 13 and took care of the family. And
it's a big responsibility for a 13-year-old.
Right. Now she was from Grodno. Sometimes it was Russia, sometimes it was Poland. Mm-hmm. And my grandfather, my mother's father, was born here. That's the one whose grandparents came here from Germany, in the 1880s. And I think that the grandfather, my great-grandfather, was from Hungary, and my great-grandmother was from Germany. And so my grandfather, Leo Goldberger, was born here. He started with his brothers a Jewish newspaper here called the Hebrew Watchman.
He started the newspaper here?
Jewish newspaper here, and his brothers, and they had a printing company. And I was asking my uncle about that, and he was saying one of the early buildings, because I know you were interested in buildings, was it was one of the early ones. It was on Jefferson, and it was downtown. There was one. It was on November 6th Street.
That's a famous street right
there. It's a famous street on the corner, and it was the Remembrance Shop. It was called. My grandfather at one point don't know if this was in the 40s. He started the paper in 1925, I think. But this was later on. Actually, his brothers helped start it, and he was the editor.
That's
but
amazing.
yeah, but it was right next to the Rendezvous. There was a restaurant,
right
and it became, and so the Rendezvous was in the base, became a restaurant underneath their printing company. But this building, I don't think isn't there anymore, though. I don't think we have to
Where
find
the printing
out.
company was?
Yeah, it was called the Remembrance Shop. He tried to have a card shop, like a greeting card shop.
Yeah.
But it was before Hallmark. It was before everything like that. I don't know how well it did.
Oh, no.
But yeah.
That was his goal, but he ended up just being a print shop and printed the
and
Jewish
then he
magazine,
also was,
or
the
newspaper.
Jewish newspaper. He was very passionate about Judaism, about Israel, and about Jewish issues, and he wanted to unite the Jewish community together. So, yeah.
Do you know how long that lasted?
Well, the paper is still.
It's still running?
Still running.
Oh,
my uncle.
that's amazing.
Yeah. The paper is still.
It's from your family.
It's a mom and
it
pop.
stayed in your
I'll give you a
family.
copy. The Hebrew Watchman. Right.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I'll put
Herman
that on our
and
show notes as well.
Herman and Bobby Goldberger. They are the editors. He's my mother's youngest brother. My mom died a few years ago. She used to write the private correspondence. Everybody was involved. My grandmother sold it. And so we came back to Memphis. Oh gosh, we lived in New York, and my husband was from Virginia, but I couldn't imagine living anywhere else. So I don't know if he's ever forgiven me. I convinced him to come back. And we did live away. We lived in Silver Spring, Maryland. He was in IH, and he was at the university here.
Wow.
But
you can't mind it too much.
right. But we see how all the different buildings, do resonate with me in different ways.
Yeah.
Going back down towards the medical center and by Overton Square is one of the early, I don't know if it was the first store, but it might have been, that my grandfather and his brother opened, Katz Brothers, and they lived above the store. It's the Magnolia Room now. It's on Florence, right by Theater Works, in Overton Square. There's a corner building. It's called the Magnolia Room. It has a little
I've never been in there,
cafe, and then it has a restaurant and like a little yard. Well, that was their store. That was their store, and the house. It was wooden. They kept the frame, but they kind of plastered over it. But it was a wooden structure that I remember.
Building.
Right, and so they lived there, and I know that my grandmother's family and my father's family were in the Holocaust. Many of them died, and there were two survivors. That two of his cousins survived. The rest of my grandmother's sisters on the Katz side of the family, and my grandfather's family, the Katz family, all those people, I can show you the picture. Many of them were killed in the Holocaust. And so two people and their spouses came over, and they lived for a time in that house.
How does it feel for you to see that place develop and change?
Right. I mean, thinking about that, how, you just think about how Memphis has changed and the families spread out, just like a community. And houses, I think, have stories to tell.
But it's really cool that you know your lineage. And
I really want to learn more. There's a lot that I really want to know that I don't know. And I was thinking about the buildings when you had talked about that, and wondering, look how some have vanished. Some have been thrown, they're gone, and we have pictures. And some are still here, but no one knows what they once were.
Because they're completely different.
Right. Well, we can't. So the buildings have evolved and changed and grown. The people carry their stories with them. So as the Jewish people, we're carrying our narratives through our Torah, and our values are all, carried that way. Yeah. And now the Hebrew Academy is out here too. The Jewish day school is over there on White Station Road.
Yeah.
In the yeshiva.
That's the same one that you had gone to when you were young?
It's the same building.
Okay.
Well, it would evolve. I had first gone in Washington, and then when they moved in 1955, I think, the building out east, and there was nothing out here. I mean, past White Station, it was all farmland.
It's crazy to think about.
I know, it was all... I remember people thought they were crazy to build that
because it's so
building.
isolated.
Yeah, the building. They didn't, because the Jewish community was really in Midtown, it was really in Valentine Hills, and it was really more by Overton Park. And no one thought, really to go that far. So I went on a school bus. We had a yellow school bus every day, pick me up on Valentine. Yeah, I lived on Hawthorne and Valentine. And right across the street,
too far from where we live.
Right. If you go and see, the Baronhurst Synagogue takes up a whole city block. It's now a church, but it's right there. Yeah. And I lived right across the street, from that, and we would get picked up.
Yeah, that's where that was.
I mean, we were very, wanting to be Americans, and at the same time, wanting to be, Jewish and keep our Jewish values. So going to a Jewish day school was a very unusual thing to do. It was an unusual kind of thing, and so it wasn't accepted in the beginning. It was something to do.
Within the kids that were going there, or the communities?
It's the communities, I think. Because,
really? Because it was different?
Right. Well, we want to support the public schools, of course, yet this was a need that needed to be done. And
Which is interesting you say that, because there's so many private schools.
Nowadays, right.
So nowadays. They can't complain about that.
Right. No. We lived in a very sheltered world, lived in a world of segregation. I saw the signs of colored and white, in the goldsmiths and in all the different places. And so that was a sad time, really.
You saw that growing up?
I saw that growing up.
Oh, wow.
And it was very hurtful to see. In fact, my father's cousins, Nina Katz, when they came over, surviving the Holocaust, and when she saw those signs, she couldn't believe it. She says, I've yearned for America, the freedom of America, yet to see this, it reminded her of Nazi Germany. And
so, the hate is everywhere.
So it was a different time, and I think Memphis has made a lot of progress. That was a challenging time.
So,
right.
Yeah, it's within our lifetime still. Like, it's in the Holocaust, like, it's still in people's memories. Like, it's...
Right, yeah. For some people.
It wasn't that long ago, I mean, it was a long time ago, but...
Right. You're right. It's still there. The people who are the survivors are getting older, and they're dying, and that'll be different when they're gone. And
but the stories get passed down.
The stories are passed down.
And the same with here. Like, the results of the racism and segregation.
Right. These stories are passed down. They need healing, I was at Stern College, Yeshiva University in New York. That's where I went, and I remember that was right before I was supposed to come home for Passover when Martin Luther King, the word came out that he was assassinated here, and it was such a terrible time. I was in college.
Oh, wow.
Actually, it was the year I was getting married too. We were getting married in the summer, and when I came home during that time, right afterwards, it was just a very divisive time and sad time. As Jewish people, I think, we in the Exodus story is central to who we are, that that freedom and dignity of all people is core. Yet, how do you make it happen? I know Rabbi Wax from Temple Israel, and at the time I didn't really know it, but I learned later he led a group, I don't know if you know this, he led the group of ministers to Mayor Loeb's office after the assassination of Martin Luther King, because it was all part of it was about the sanitation workers' strike, as you probably know, and they still was not able. The mayor didn't want to meet with these workers, so the rabbi led the group and said, to him and said, we've got to do something. You need to meet, and he says it's against the law, and so Rabbi Wax, the way I remember it, said, well, there's a higher law.
Wow.
And so, and he did end up meeting with them and to solve that. But
that is interesting. You have a lot of stories.
I was thinking of the stories. I was thinking of the buildings and what do I know about the buildings. And I remember my mother's story. And I realized, after you're talking about the temple build, it's now the Mississippi Boulevard Church, that my mother must have gone there. Her family was not observant. They didn't go to the Orthodox shul, though her grandfather, I think, was one of the founders of Baron-Hirsch, but somehow they belonged everywhere, but they weren't Sabbath observers. So she rode a streetcar down to the Temple Israel, which would have been that temple before when it was a temple. She sang in the choir there, and when she was a girl, and she loved the music, but yet there was something, she was looking for something else, and so she decided on her own to go to the Baron Hirsch, the Orthodox synagogue, where they had junior congregation for teenagers, and when she went, she met my father. And he was she was the first one there, and she was the second one there. And she said, "I thought I knew everyone in Memphis." She was about 16 years old. Yeah. He was about 18. And that night, she tells her best friend, "I've met the man I'm going to marry." And
That's real?
2.5 years later, they were married. And so she became, Orthodox, and we became observant. And that means, living around when you're, we're Sabbath observers, you live right around the synagogue. So So you walk. I don't know if you knew. Did you know that?
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'd heard about that recently.
Right. So that was.
Man, if I could just walk
things kosher
everywhere, that'd be great.
Wouldn't it be great to walk here? Anyway.
Walk to work, walk to your place of worship. That's perfect.
Right. So buildings change, people change and grow and choose all kinds of things.
So does this mean if the synagogue were to move, then that means you're going to move?
Right. If the synagogue were to move, then yes, I would have to do something. I don't want to be near a synagogue. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I just commercial. The Jewish Historical Society of Memphis in the Mid-South is a wonderful organization here in Memphis that really wants to preserve all the stories and the histories of the people in the Jewish community. And so I was lucky to become a member back when it started in the 80s. And so that's how I found out about you, because so they have an archives. Temple Israel has an archives that is working to preserve the stories and all of the documents and different things in the temple community, and so part of it houses the collection of the Temple of Historical Society's collection.
How long have you been a part of that?
1980s. One project I just finished, which I really have felt really good about, it was the Exodus Project, which was from a grant from the Memphis Jewish Federation called a Jewish Federation Grant. And what we did is we had volunteers that interviewed the Jewish families that came here from the former Soviet Union during the Soviet Jewry movement. And that was a movement, and you may know about it, but it's, when the doors of the Soviet Union were locked, and especially for Jews, no one could leave, and they couldn't leave, and there was a lot of discrimination and anti-Semitism against Jews, and many people didn't really know, what it meant to be Jews. They couldn't really learn about their religion and all kinds of things. So there was all kinds of protests to open the doors to let them out. And so people came eventually. They settled in Israel, they came to the United States, and some came to Memphis. And so we have a community of people from the former Soviet Union. They have all kinds of stories. So all of those interviews are stored at the archives that we did.
Available.
Yeah, right.
That would be interesting to go and listen to.
Yeah, and we had a huge exhibition. It's a lot of pictures.
Where was that at?
It was at the Jewish Community Center.
Okay.
I just gave those pictures to the Center of Southern Folklore. Have you ever been there?
That's a long time ago. I want to go back.
Yeah.
You talked about Elvis.
Judaism. I could talk about Elvis, right?
That's right.
Well, I know that almost everybody in Memphis of a certain age has an Elvis story. I really think so. And in the Jewish community, I think that people of a certain age have an Elvis story. I mean, really. I'll tell you, I knew that Mr. Kilstein, he's no longer in this world, but he was Elvis's tailor. And he lived, and, there's this story, everyone, and Elvis was a generous soul. You may have heard this.
Uh-huh.
He had a Jewish dentist. I mean, the story of the nurse where he went, I can't remember the name of the dentist, but he said, look out the window. And there was a Cadillac, and he gave away Cadillacs. The story is that the first principal of the Hebrew Academy, the Jewish day school in the early years, lived over there near St. Jude. It's Lauderdale Courts. It was Lauderdale's Courts. It was an apartment complex. And Elvis, as a young boy, lived there with his family.
I know. It's now like Greenlaw Apartments.
Oh, is that what it is? So he lived, I don't know if it's like, so the rabbi and his wife and children lived upstairs. He lived downstairs. And the story is that the rabbi would lend his record player to Elvis. Elvis really, that was very poor.
Oh.
And sometimes Elvis was what's called it's called a Shabbos goy. I don't know if you know that term.
I don't know that.
Sabbath Gentile who very obligingly, when if the Sabbath comes, there's certain Jewish laws of Sabbath observers you can't turn your ovens on, you can't turn the lights on and off. Everything has to be prepared before the Sabbath, before Shabbat.
Oh, okay.
Say right, all the meal, everything is cooked. So it'll say, "Oh my gosh, I forgot to turn this light off. I forgot to turn off. What do I do?" And you're not allowed to ask anybody. So
is this really how it is even now?
Yeah, even now.
You prepare your meals before?
Yeah, everything is cooked before. The table is set. The candles are ready. The wine cup is out. The challah bread is on the table. The dish, and the food is cooked. It's in a warming up. The food for the next day is cooked.
Because you really have a day of relaxation.
Right. It's really you don't do. Somebody said, "Well, why is turning on a light considered work?" Well, really, it's the creative acts. It's the acts of creativity that were done in the temple and during the tabernacles. It includes baking and painting and so electricity is from making a fire. It's from the oral tradition. So
you can light a candle though?
No.
Oh no!
You light your candles right before the Sabbath is starting. You make the blessing, and then you don't light candles. You don't any creative act of doing. I don't know how to describe it, like drawing or cell phone, any technology.
What about reading?
No. Yes,
Reading
reading is wonderful. Reading, studying, getting together with friends, going to the synagogue. That's the traditional Sabbath.
Okay.
Of course, in different denominations, it's celebrated or in very different ways. Okay. I'm giving you the traditional approach right now, so that's what we do. So,
sorry, I went on a sidetrack because I was curious, but you were
right. Well, with the Elvis, so he would lead the record player out, and he also so Elvis was exposed to this Jewish cantor. I think it was. Robert Merrill, and apparently once this cantor is written up went to this concert of Elvis, and the wife wanted to go backstage, and he said he won't know who I am, but the truth is he did because he knew this music. That's the story. That's one story, but anyway, the story is that Elvis's grandmother was of Jewish ancestry. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
I didn't know that.
But whether that's true, there was a Jewish star on the grave. And the other story is that he would take what it was called the Jewish Mafia. He had some friends that were Jewish, George Klein and others, and when he was getting famous, he couldn't just go out during the day, so he would go out in the middle of the night, like at 2:00 in the morning. The Jewish Community Center would open up their doors, and he would play racquetball in the middle of the night, and he was very grateful and gave them a donation, and they had a Jewish library for a while, and it was donated by him.
That's nice.
Yeah, but once I did meet him.
You did?
I did. He used to stand outside. And I thought it was Graceland. My mother said, no, it was Audubon Park. There were musical notes on the gates.
Yeah, that's nice.
So I really feel like it was Graceland. So that was our debate. We're not sure. But my cousins from Chicago, who were a few years older than me, I was about 10, they loved to play the guitar. They loved his music. And we went to see Elvis, and he would stand outside and give autographs. And he was just gorgeous. He had black, shiny hair and big blue eyes and creamy skin, and he wore purple satin pants and a white silk shirt that he bought at Lansky's, which was and he was just really warm and friendly. And my cousin, told him a joke and said, Elvis, I heard you were in the hospital. And he looked at her and he says, what? She said, yes, for sideburns. And he laughed, though. He was really nice. Sweet. He did laugh. And he gave my mother a kiss. That's what she remembers that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but I did love his music, and I did love him. Yeah, growing up in Memphis, so being able to be part of the Judaism and, big culture in the general community.
Yeah.
So that was the
balance.
It was a balance, and you can do that. Before, during the 50s, everybody wanted to blend in. You didn't want to say, you kind of wanted to be Americans. And if you were Jewish, I wasn't, I was proud to be Jewish, but I was, told, you got to be American too.
Yeah.
Not by my parents as much anyway.
So pressure.
But we had the English names, and right. So when Israel, when Israel was able to take back the Jerusalem and the Western Wall, which was the spot where the temple stood and where the city of David was, and Jewish people had been forbidden to pray there because the Jordanians had control of it. So it was closed off with barbed wire. And when they went, there was an outpouring of Jewish pride when the soldiers were able to go to the kotel, the wall, and pray. And even those who were not religious felt there was something special. So Jews all over the world felt a sense of Jewish pride. And I think it was after the civil rights movement too, with Black pride, with people coming to feel like, we can be unique. Uh-huh. We can be our own person. We can have our own beliefs. We can still be part of the community. Yeah. We can be, but yet we don't have to give up who we are. Mm-hmm. And that's really the story of the Hanukkah. That's the Hanukkah story.
Yeah.
It's really about celebrating differences too. It's about, no, we can be unique. We don't need to give up. Yeah. And so after my children were born, after they were born in the 70s, we gave them Hebrew names. They didn't have English names, so they have Hebrew names.
Nice.
Simcha, which means joy, and Tova is good, and Shoshana is roses.
That's really nice.
So they have, so it's one name. So there's a different time, and I think now is our challenge is to take our uniqueness and the sparks of who we are and our own, each unique, and be able to live together in harmony and be able to hear each other, and respect each other.
Yeah.
And celebrate the differences and be inclusive with people, that everybody has a story to tell.
I love that. And that's a good way to end, I think.
Yeah, that's a good way. That's it.
I like that. Thank you, Ilya and Lynnie.
Ilya, right. Lynnie. Call me Lynnie. That's good.
All right. Thank you. And you've been listening to Memphis Type History, the podcast.
We like your type.
You've been listening to Memphis Type History, the podcast. It would mean so much to us if you head over to iTunes and give us a rating and review. Be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode.
Want to be part of Memphis Type History and get behind-the-scenes content, merch, and more? Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Memphis Type History. That's Patreon, spelled patreon.com/Memphis Type History.
Find more Memphis Type History on our blog at memphistypehistory.com, on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest as Memphis Type History, and on Twitter at Memphis Type.